basically the rules of the team or Dan's manager manifesto. And it's something that I do with everybody who joins my team. I want to make sure that they know kind of what I expect and what I'm looking for, um, and not necessarily the way that most people think. So I did want to go through and do this, my manager manifesto, and this will be my podcast for tomorrow. You get to see it, the 50th one. Welcome to my journey of self-discovery, life balance, career success, and business creation. This podcast works to answer the question of how successful professionals like us stop drifting and get focused on keeping our careers and businesses growing rapidly while having a full, balanced, and vibrant life that we absolutely love. What we call the Third Power Life. And this is the Third Power Life Podcast. All right. So, the rules of the team or Dan's manager manifesto. And, as you know, life balance is huge for me. So, what is the number one rule of the team? The number one rule of the team is balance. I expect a lot out of people. I demand excellence and diligence, but no work, no job, nothing that involves a company is worth your well-being. It's just not. We work to live, not live to work, right? And this is one of those ones that I've made that mistake in my own life, right? And I want people to understand that, yeah, yes, work is important. Yes, getting everything done is important. The the number of items on our to-do list is always going to be there, right? But yeah, I always talk about how in the priorities of life, I don't know what your, religious view or any of that is, right? Doesn't matter. But there's a priority of things in life, right? For many people, it's a higher power, and then it's their spouse and their children, and then it's their family, then their friends, and then maybe somewhere down in their work. Right? So, yes, work is important. And, I expect you to do your job well, but I also understand that family comes first. Your well being comes first. Life balance is critical. And you can even see in there that in a way it's selfish because you're going to perform better if your life is in balance and you're grounded and balanced, right? That's the way to success, is having that. So that's my number one rule, is balance. It's what I want. So the number two is the importance, not urgency, right? There are always urgent demands on our time and our attention. And not everything that's urgent is important. Now, especially in the corporate world, you get somebody that's got really cool letters after their name that tends to, oh my God, this VP or this whatever said that they needed this. Okay. Is it really important or is it just urgent? And so this is the thing that I tell everybody on my team is, just because it's urgent doesn't mean it's important. And I take that from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey has this quadrant. You've got important and urgent. Those are fires. Those are things that you've got to deal with. Those are crises, right? And then you've got where most people spend their time are things that are urgent but not important, right? And where we need to be spending time is things that are important but not urgent, right? And so I just, when in doubt, I always tell people, reach out to me, reach out to their own manager, but understand that just because it's urgent doesn't mean it's important. Number three is the one thing. The great book, I love that there's a book called The One Thing. I can't remember the author right off the top of my head. Um, but it really boils down to this question that we need to be asking ourselves every day. What's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? You know, we all have to-do lists. I mean, my to-do list is a million miles long sometimes. Um, but we can't do more than one thing at a time. We just can't. One at a time, right? And so we need to focus and take the time. It's why my morning routine is so important for me. What's the one thing that I can do that's the most important, the big domino? What's the thing that's going to have the most impact that makes everything else I have to do either easier or I don't have to do it, right? So be constantly asking ourselves that question. Number 4 is be willing to make mistakes. And this was so this one's really important in a lot of ways. I've seen so many projects that stall and don't go forward because people aren't willing to make a decision because they don't want to make a mistake. And so it's like, well, I'll go back to the business or I'll ask my boss or I need to wait for such and such. I tell people on my team, be willing to make the call, right? Make a decision, and as long as you can kind of explain the logic that you had, you're not just like, flipping a coin, go, do it. I want you to feel empowered to make a decision and to make a mistake, and it's okay. I still remember there was a story about this this guy, I don't remember what kind of company it was, but this kind of mid-level manager made a mistake and it ended up costing the company like $1 million. It was a big deal, right? And so he got called into his boss's office. The boss kind of yelled at him for a little bit, how could this happen? Blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the meeting, the guy's like, all right, well, I'll go clean out my desk now. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, I just cost the company $1 million. I must be fired. And he's like, I just spent $1 million on your education. Are you ever gonna let something like that happen again? I was like, "No, I don't wanna have to pay another million for somebody else to learn that." Right? So it's that difference of mindset. And, so I want you to be able to have that same opportunity. No, I don't want you making, silly things. Don't make the same mistake over and over again, right? But be willing to take the chance and to make the decision. Okay. All right. Number 5 is be creative. This one always kind of throws people a little bit. Um, we all have our own style of creativity, right? And uh, it's important for you to express who you really are at work. I remember listening to an audio program by David White. He's a British poet. It was on cassette tapes. That tells you how long ago this was. But he was talking about soul in the workplace. And he did it using the poem of Beowulf as like an allegory to kind of guide the conversation. And there was this one part that I remember out of the program that just really, really spoke to me. And it was along the lines that the corporate world, as human beings, we want this broad experience in life. We want to experience colors and textures and life and all different, variety of things, right? That's what our soul wants. It wants that an interesting life. The corporate world asks a very narrow piece of who we are as people, right? And yet, through that narrow straw, will suck our entire life away, right? It's like all of our energy out. And I remember I was like, I feel that like painfully, right? And I was like, yeah. And so for me, I want your experience in this department, in my on my team, to be to give a little bit more of the human experience. I want there to be some creativity. Now it can be outside of work too, be creative there too, but in your work, find ways to be creative. I still remember doing a presentation for my boss at the time. He was going to present to a big leader meeting. And, so I did, took screenshots and, did the information that he needed for the PowerPoint presentation. And I'm like, when I got done, I'm like, you know what? I want to make this just a little bit better. So I took some extra time. It took about probably half an hour, 45 minutes, and just I made it cool. I made all the text line up right and all the pictures the same size with a little bit of drop shadow. And, you know, there were some things where it got real into the detailed, like, those, if you've ever seen the eye chart presentations, right? Where it's like, I can't read all of those details. So that I made little links in the PowerPoint so you could like skip that whole section if they didn't need to go into it. Basically, I was playing with PowerPoint, right? And let's be honest. Um, but it was fun. It was something creative. It was something a little bit different that made the work stand out, and it made my day. It made that day a little better, right? So take that time, be creative in your work. All right, number 6 is stand up for yourself. Um, we are always respectful, courteous. I expect that of my team, and I also expect you to receive it as well, to receive courtesy and respect. And in business, there are a lot of very strong personalities, and sometimes people don't realize that they're overstepping bounds, or, well, let's be honest, sometimes they do, and doesn't matter. But so I want you to make sure that you are courageous to defend yourself, and if you feel like you're not being treated fairly or with respect or what have you, you come to your manager, you come to me because I want to know about it, and I will rectify the situation. So always know that I got your back. And the last rule, number 7, is to grow. Learn, become better, and not just at work. Yes, I want you to grow your career. I want you to move up in the company. I want to help you progress professionally, but I also want you to be a better human being. I tell people, all the time that my job ultimately is to make you a better person for having been part of my team. And, yes, I want you to have more skills. Yes, I want you to be better at your job, but I also want you to be a better spouse. I want you to be a better parent. I want you to be a better sibling. I want you to be a better member of the human race for having been here. So whatever I can do to help you grow, to learn, to become more, I want to do that. That's why I'm here. I make the joke, and you'll hear me joke about it. I'm here to make work not suck, right? That's kind of the funny way of talking about it. But the reality of it is I'm here for you to grow, to be a better person. That's what I want. And that's what I hope you find here. So those are the rules of the team. I appreciate you listening. This is my manager manifesto, right? It's what I want for people that are working with me to know. Here's what I expect, and here's where I'm coming from. And it's not just, what are the standard operating procedures? It's who do I want you to be? Because we are not human doings, we are human beings. And, part of being in my organization is I want you to be. I want you to be better. I'm glad you enjoyed this podcast. Please let us know what impacted you in today's episode. You can join our Discord or Facebook community to connect with like-minded people that want a real third power life. you can go to thirdpowerlife.com or look in the show notes for links. And remember, hit that like, subscribe, and rate button for the Third Power Life podcast. Until next time.